This is Prime Sports NASCAR on Prime Sports Network as Joey Logano has earned himself a trip to the Final Four after winning in Kansas. So, guys, we had a very interesting race at Kansas because we were treated to really good grip because of the cool weather, which once again begs the question. It just seems like, well, there's like a simple deduction of how you can get these cars to bundle up closer to one another. Now, go ahead and figure it out. You know, all you have to do is maintain the now. No, you can't, of course, put a dome in and air conditioning, but there's got to be some scientists somewhere that can figure out a way to make that work. And then a little bit later on, we had a situation where for about the last 40, 50 laps or so, something like that, it was Joey Logano holding on to Kevin Harvick, and Harvick every lap or two getting on the bumper, the rear bumper of Joey Logano, and it looks like, is this one is going to pass? And you just figured, okay, at some point he's going to pass, right? And then after about 20 laps or 20 to go, you started getting the bad feeling that this is not going to change. And it didn't. And I look, if you had Logano, great. If you wanted someone else in there other than Harvick, great. But wow, was that torture.
It was tough. It was a 45-lap stretch where Harvick obviously had the faster car, could get up there, but just didn't have enough momentum to get by in that dirty air with this aerodynamics package and the way that the grip and everything kind of played out. Just Logano in the ability in the catbird seat as Eric knocks over his camera there.
Yeah, but Eric's like changing the sides of the screens and knocking the camera.
I was saying, if you notice, I didn't even move. I don't even know how that happened. The aerodynamic Logano blocked my phone off.
He was so angry at the aerodynamics that it just knocked his phone right over. Yeah. So yeah, Logano. I mean, whoever was in the lead there was going to be the one to win at the end, and it just so happened. I mean, Harvick said it when he got out of the car. It was the race off of pit road, and Joey Logano won that race, and that was the decider. That was it. There was just nothing you could do. Passing for the lead, we saw at Talladega and Daytona with the drafting packages they had there a couple of years ago. Impossible to pass at the front of the field. You could make moves all the way through, but once you got up to the lead, it became really, really difficult, and that's exactly what we saw on Sunday.
Yeah, we talked about that again, but the whole. Well, look, you tell me, Eric. I mean, you watched what we watched, so how frustrating was it?
Very. Yeah, I mean, because you see the restarts, and the start of the race was action packed. It was fun. You saw 2, 3, sometimes 4 wide. That's what we want to see. That's what NASCAR hoped to see. And then you get to that end, like CJ was saying, it's just like, I get it. To me, the faster cars should be rewarded to win. And the faster car couldn't get by the guy in front of him. That's a problem when there's only one car in front of you and you can't pass the one car. That's granted, he was blocked. Logano did nothing wrong by the blocking because that's part of you're allowed to.
Of course.
You're making your car wide. But, yeah, I don't understand why we can't get – we see it on super speedways. The drag's high enough and the guys get such a big run in tow that that's why you see the closing rate. They keep talking about that. Why can't we get the closing rate like that on these other tracks? Because that would help. I like to see the cars suck up to them and be able to pass, and you just can't do it right now. And I think, like, you look at Kurt Busch in Vegas. I mean, he was a 13th or 15th place car. He gets in the lead. We talked about it last week. You can't pass him. And here we go again. Kevin Harvick, 85 laps or something like that, the most of the race, and he can't pass the car because he didn't get off pit road first. And I think that shouldn't be a detriment if you don't get off pit road first, that you don't win the race. I don't like that.
That's what we talked about last week. That's wrong. What these tracks are. Some of these tracks, especially the 1.5-mile tracks, it's about getting off the pits before the other driver and hoping that you can actually find a way to have a good restart. It's just not what we want to see. But you would think with all of those laps, but like you said, with Kurt Busch, it was only about another, 10 or 15 additional laps. Kurt had, 30?
30. That was 30.
Joey had almost 50, something like that.
Yep.
So
42 laps from the green to the end. It's 45 to go in the pit, and then 42 green flag laps. And you can't. It just goes to show you, and CJ's talked about this a lot, and he's right, that you need tire fall off. We need something like if they're all on new tires, and we know 42 laps is pretty easy on a green flag run with this package, and especially in the cooler temperatures, the tire's not falling off. It's just exactly with what we saw. And the biggest fix, I think, to get the grip, I think, like you said at the first of the show, is night racing on this package. 1.5 miles used to be on this other package, the lower downforce. Why not race in hot, humid, slick conditions? Because that helped passing. Well, this is the far opposite. You need more grip. The best way to do that is night racing. I mean, you're not and racing in Kansas in October, I guess. Maybe go to some cooler climates and the fall.
Degrees.
Yeah. I saw that heat index. The wind chill was in the 30s. I'm like, I guess that's what you can do, but it is frustrating. I think, hey, we got another 1.5 mile track. We'll probably see it again this weekend, unfortunately.
Well, that's why I brought up the scientists, because you would think that somebody with a brain can figure out, all right, well, cooler temperatures, we can't manipulate the weather, so what do we do? I mean, this is 2020. You can't figure that out. I can't figure it out. I'm not that smart. But you can't figure that out?
The easiest way...
You got to follow the science.
Yeah, exactly. Put some mask on the front. Hey, speaking of mask on the front, it was so cold. Truex's tape wouldn't even stick to his car.
Yes. You couldn't put a mask on.
Some smart people. Yeah, the mask would fall off. It's too cold. Maybe that in the wintertime, maybe it's going to go the opposite for us. I can't wear the mask on my face. It's too cold. It just keeps falling off my ears. But yeah, it's. A solution is, can we just take the downforce away? And look at the Xfinity cars. They put on a better show week in and week out with higher horsepower, lower downforce. And I think we're back to that point. And again, NASCAR, I just feel like they turned a deaf ear. They keep saying, oh, the fans want this. The fans want this.
What?
They want this package, they keep saying. But I haven't seen anybody. Fans? That's what I'm saying. I haven't seen one person say, hey, I like this. Leave it alone. I keep seeing people like, this is crap. This isn't racing. This is just a bunch of cars that for the first 5 laps on a restart looking chaotic, and then they eventually can't pass each other when they start calming down. And just if they could have the whole race look like the opening 15, 20 laps, great. Yeah, your package works, but there's a problem when it goes after 5 laps. They start spreading out, and it just reminds me of those super speedway races when they all ride the top line. In a Congo train, and that's kind of what you get. You just can't pass with this package with the aero, and you've got to somehow find a way to eliminate it. And the easiest way is take the downforce away.
All right, so Logano gets the win though. So he steals the win, and he's one of 4 championship drivers now. And what does this do to Harvick and Hamlin if they don't win?
I think they're
still good.
Yeah, Harvick's great. I think Harvick, there's no problem there. Hamlin, 20 to the good. He's got to really hope he doesn't revert to the old Hamlin at Texas or even recent Hamlin. He's got 1 win, but he's also outside the top 20. 1, 2, 3, 4 of his last 5 have been 28th or worse. He does that again, he could be in some trouble. But other than that, I think they're good. The race now is really. Honestly, I think right now is between Keselowski and Elliott for the 4th spot. I think that's all you've got. Everybody else, Bowman on back, they pretty much have to win for this point. And I think that's why Texas this weekend, definitely for Bowman and Kurt, a must-win. Kurt's a must-win anyways, but Bowman, because he's not that great at Martinsville, and Truex is good at Martinsville, but I feel like he's lacking something right now. So I feel like it might just remain status quo for the rest of this playoffs.
But Hamlin and Harvick, all right, if something were to happen the way Kurt Busch's engine blew, what is that? That just puts him in a position where they're still okay as long as they have a good race, maybe a top 5 at Martinsville.
I think for Harvick.
For Harvick, yeah.
For Harvick, yes.
For Harvick.
For Hamlin, no. Hamlin would be on the edge if that happened to him.
Yeah.
Hamlin kind of used his 1 mulligan. We talked about how you have, 1 good mulligan that you could use. Harvick obviously didn't use that finishing runner-up.
Yep.
Hamlin kind of did. So if he got one more, you could say he's 1.5 of a mulligan's used at that point.
Okay.
Stage points, saving these guys, it depends too on when it happens in the race. Stage points are what helped these guys Sunday. If something happens like in the final stage, like that's what helped Hamlin, was that 15th place finish didn't hurt him as bad because he won the second stage and had good enough stage points. But if
Right.
like Busch, he didn't score any stage points in the first stage because of the speeding, I believe, and didn't get very many in the second stage, and his engine blew. So, yeah, I agree with CJ. I think Hamlin being 20 up, if that happens in the first or second stage, like an engine failure, I fully believe he'd be on the outside looking in, going to Martinsville. Plus,
that's all though. That would have to be something that catastrophic.
Yeah, and the other factor would be if anybody below them, because Keselowski, Elliott, Bowman, Truex, somebody wins, and then you get to Martinsville and let's just say Bowman wins Sunday and Truex wins Martinsville, then it's one of the two that get in because you only got one wild card spot. So, and Hamlin being 21 points now behind Harvick, that's where Harvick pretty well has got that wild card spot if he wants it. I feel like Harvick, obviously, judged by my picks, is going to win on Sunday. But if not, Harvick could sweat this out a little bit if your situation happens, like you said, for Hamlin, happens to Harvick. He doesn't get many points this weekend. Then he goes to Martinsville, where he's got like one or two top fives in his last 18 races there, and he struggles. And there you go. There you got your mulligan and a bad finish, and some like Truex can sneak their way back in. But it's going to take something catastrophic to keep both of them out at this point.
Okay. So yes, as you mentioned, so Harvick finishes in second, even though he led the most laps, 85. Hamlin led 58 laps, and the only thing really there, and again, you mentioned the mulligan, so I didn't catch it. What was I was watching, but what did he just lose grip, or why did he ram the wall?
He got too high. I think he was trying to do something, makes more than what he should have. He had a good run. Yep, and he went outside, and sometimes you get in the marbles out there, and even with more grip, you just slide. The way the wall comes off the corner, you have no room. You just happen to get up in the marbles and slide into the wall. So I would have thought he would have known better, but then again, he probably had in the back of his mind, it's hard to pass. You have to make the moves when you got him there, and he knew he had a mulligan in his back pocket for this exact situation. So now, but again, you got to look at his car this season too. He's had good speed, so he probably figured, yep, I can get away with this because I know what I can do these next 2 weeks too.
All right. I was looking for like this paperwork regarding the race because I had all of my notes down, and then I realized, I probably have it up on my desktop, which is kind of hard to find when I'm trying to do the show. But I'm going to go ahead and do it anyway. So I'm going to switch it over here so people can actually see what I'm doing online. But bottom line is, the reason I wanted to get this, because there are a few notes that I wrote down, including a clip that we're going to look at in just a little bit regarding Dale Jr. But I wanted to talk about we talked about Hamlin, but there was three others, and I just wanted to make sure I had the right information here, which I do now, which is, of course, Truex starting in the rear and not passing inspection. So talk about that, because this is also something we always mention. You never know what's going to happen if a driver is going to be behind the 8 ball in the playoffs, and this is what happened to Truex, and he ended up finishing 9th, which actually wasn't all that bad.
No, we've talked about that in the past. Like, they've got to stop failing inspections. Stop putting yourself back there. And I think, and he even said afterwards, that's all he had. I mean, he quickly moved up by the competition caution. He was 12th, but he only gained 4 more spots the rest of the way. I mean, he was 8th in both stages. He just couldn't. How we talk about that proverbial, that wall of the air in front of you can't get past. It feels like it's like a cement wall in front of him to get past 7th or 8th. He just, for a while there, he was getting 2nd, 3rd, 4th. He just couldn't get the win, and now
so that's what they're trying to do.
Farther. yeah, they're struggling. They just can't get up there.
I think that's overreacting. I think that's overthinking. When you're second and third, and you think to me, it's like a championship golfer, and you see this all the time. And he's having a great couple of years, and then he struggles for about the first 4, 5, 6 months of the next season, and you go, why is he struggling? He was so great the last couple of years. Oh, by the way, he decided to change his swing. He decided to bring in new equipment because as great as he was, he think he could be better. And it ends up just completely screwing up his game. And I think this is what you're seeing at a different level. If that's the case, that they're trying to get over the hump instead of just keep doing what you're doing, eventually you'll get some breaks.
I think that's right. And I think the crew chief change is another factor in that. I mean, they just don't look like they've got the speed like he had with Cole Pern. I mean, they're solid, don't get me wrong. I mean, most of these guys would take a top 10 any day of the week, but he keeps getting top 10s, and he said it after the race, and the quotes was, yeah, I'm confident we're going to eventually get there, but we don't have it right now. We're missing something. I feel like we can get it, but we just don't have it. And without practice, I saw that quote, and I'm like, Kyle Busch came back to my head. Like, yeah, I trust you. You can find it, but you've got 2 races left in this round with no practice. How are you going to find it in 2 races that make me think that something's going to change? So, yeah, it scared me a little bit.
I was just going to say that's a Joe Gibbs thing. It's not Martin Truex. Busch many times throughout the season, he was really close, overthinking it, and then you end up with an inspection failure, and you're at the back of the field, and you put yourself in a hole. It's not just Martin Truex. It's not just Kyle Busch. It seems to be that whole organization. I'm curious if we went back and looked at all the inspection failures into the rears throughout the entire season. I'd be willing to put my money that Joe Gibbs has the most of them.
They do. Okay. I did see a stat of that over on Sunday. I think Truex had like 7, 8, something like that. And Hamlin had like 6.
Jeez.
So that tells you they are. What to me is more concerning is they're getting. Clearly, they fail those because they're pushing the envelope. Sure. They're trying something, and it's still not working. To me, it's like, hey, if you're pushing the envelope, at least win the race. But
at this point of the season, enough already. If you haven't figured it out by now, it's too late to be putting yourself in this position.
That's
the bad roll of the dice.
They're. And he's never won at Texas before. You go to a track that he's never won at, too. Yeah. So it's
if you were going to do it, you should have done it this week.
Yeah, that's why to me was telling. I thought for sure Kansas, and I thought he was the better pick. That he'd be. Let's see what he's got. I mean, he's had some momentum. Let's see what he's got, and the fact that that's the best they can do with a good track for him. Going to a track out of this round, Texas is the worst track for him. And the best they can do is 8th. And he even said it's the best. That's the best we could do was 8th of the stages, 9th in the race. Then I don't think that bodes well for the rest of the playoffs.
Well, it's the best you can do because if you started in the 30s, wherever you started.
Yeah.
So that didn't help.
31. Yeah. 31 points out now. So and you can't afford it now. Now you cannot afford a failure.
Is he in a position though where he pretty much has to win yet?
Not quite. I mean, 31 points is a lot to make up, but you've got to have stage points in there. You've got to have a lot.
He's going to have to cut that in half this week.
Oh yeah, you don't want to be. I think especially with these guys, last round the record, and this is 2014 to get in from outside to get in was like 19 points. So now you're in the round of 8. Where other than that, Kurt Busch fluked his way in. I mean, I don't think he necessarily was going to make it if he didn't win in Vegas. But now you've got 8 quality drivers in this round. You're not making up 19 points on anybody that's in this round. So I think you need to be single digits going into Martinsville down. And he's 31. So you've got to make up some ground. Because let's face it, Martinsville, you're not going to probably see a lot of, other than brakes, you don't get a lot of parts failures in Martinsville. So you're not going to have a lot of engines blown or anything flukish like that. And we've seen the other short tracks, the way they've raced in the playoffs. You don't see a lot of guys wrecking each other on purpose. They're trying to save their cars for the end. So I don't think you're going to see a lot of risk taken. So that means you've got to get some stage points here and get a good finish this weekend, or it's going to be all for naught.
And then the other drivers who had some issues, Kurt Busch was caught speeding, then blows the engine with 70 to go. And then we had poor radio communication that led to Chase Elliott pitting when he was supposed to stay out with 11 laps to go in stage 2. So Kurt Busch is done. And Elliott, what did that do to him? Because he ended up finishing 6th, which is pretty strong, which leads you to believe without the issues, he might have been able to win the race. You could have been up there.
Messed him up early on for sure. I was impressed actually at how much he was able to recover, because not being able to hear, and as much as he was complete that, he comes down to pit road when everybody's telling him to stay out. I mean, there's some points thrown away there for sure. But to climb all the way back up to 6th, they figured out some kind of workaround. I don't know if I never heard if the radio started working better or if they figured out some kind of system, but for him to come from that situation all the way back up to 6th, I think was extremely impressive. I don't know that he necessarily had the car that would have been able to get him to win, but without a doubt, he probably threw away 2 to 3 spots.
Well, he led
on the
48
finish
laps, so he did have.
He did.
What do you guys, and I guess in the true presidential debate to jump in, what do you guys think of Chase Elliott, the NASCAR coming out Monday, saying that they messed up? They should have penalized Elliott for his radio. Like, whoa, wait a minute here. You're admitting this like a day later because technically the rule book, if you can't hear your team in the car or they can't hear you, you're supposed to come down pit road until you get it rectified. And NASCAR admitted on Monday that, hey, we made a mistake. We thought he could hear them. And we thought, they said they listened at one point and they were communicating, so they just stopped listening. And then it realized that when green flag runs, he couldn't hear his team, or the team couldn't hear him. And they literally admit it. So I'll give them kudos for at least stepping up and admitting that you're wrong. But it's like, ooh, a day later to NASCAR's most popular driver admitting that you should have black flagged him, because that 6th place finish is gone.
Why would okay, so how do they know unless the crew chief and or the driver admits it?
They listen, like they hear, like the TV broadcast, somebody would alert them, and they can listen to anybody's scanner at any time when they want to.
No, I mean, couldn't I have something like, okay, hey guys, just this is part of our strategy every race, and here's one of the checklists. If you can't hear me, just say, I'm having a hard time hearing you. I can hear you a little bit, but I'm having a hard time hearing you. That's a cue to, I can't hear you. I have no communication with you. Couldn't you do that?
I don't know if there's going to be a laptop that's found in Chase Elliott's garage or anything, but the way I took it was that Elliott could hear. So
he could hear.
You heard him on TV. You heard him on TV say a couple times, the louder you talk, the less I'm able to hear you. He did not, for whatever reason, catch the call to come down to pit road, but there was communication going back and forth. So just as Eric said, if NASCAR dropped in and they hear a little bit going back and forth, I think that suffices. And personally, I think that rule is important for places like Talladega and Daytona. I don't think it's as important for a place like Kansas, Texas, probably any other track that they go to.
Keep the driver safe.
Exactly right.
Spotters,
it's a safety thing. Yeah, it's a safety thing, and your spotter's there. And I think that matters and is very important at Daytona and Talladega, not so much at the other tracks.
No, I wish that rule was – I make it a rule for the super speedways, but like Chase said, it wasn't a huge deal. Like coming up through the ranks, like late models and your short track, they don't have spotters. You just kind of drive off feel. So I don't think it was it actually hindered him at one point because he pit and wasn't supposed to, but – yeah. It is a rule, and that's why it got people riled up a little bit on Monday. Whoa, you knew this, and you didn't penalize this guy, or he's the popular. So now you get the popular driver.
It's not like a ref at a game.
I don't know why they admitted to
makes
it.
A decision. This is something where you're sitting around and you're thinking about it, or you're okay because you had to have known.
Yeah.
So they must have just said, "Let's not."
I mean,
it's fishy. It's strange.
It is. That's what people are like, oh, here come. It didn't help NASCAR because a lot of people throw the conspiracy theories on a lot of things with NASCAR, and then you do this. I'm like,
if it is no conspiracy, if they're not trying to get Chase in, then why do it? What was the whole reasoning behind it?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know why they even admitted to
It's
it.
sort
on
of like
Monday.
what happened with Bubba Wallace, the whole
off.
Bubba Wallace thing. It's like the communication with the media and after the fact is just kind of screwed up. It doesn't make any sense.
No, and I mean, granted, in this type of year, it's kind of like your Lakers or your big teams. Like, hey, we kind of need Chase Elliott in the championship for just to spice things up. But if I were the guys behind him, I might be a little ticked because, like, well, wait a minute here. He is a rule.
Sure.
They were in violation. He didn't get penalized. He's only 8 points down. Fixing an issue like that would take multiple laps. He'd probably be 4, 5, 6 laps before because a lot of times what they do is you switch your helmet out, switch your earplugs, then you try to hear.
That's a crazy
by the time
penalty,
you get
man.
going.
That's a death penalty during a race.
That's what they said. That's what they were talking. This is almost like if they would have penalized him, like the rule states, he would be in a must-win situation. That would ruin his championship. It'd be must-win.
All right, so they're saying he should have been penalized.
Yeah,
but yet Chase Elliott and these guys could still communicate.
Barely, yeah.
Barely.
But I thought it was zero
supposed to be clear.
I thought you only were.
It's supposed to be clear. Like you're supposed to hear each other at all times.
That's not. That doesn't really leave it open to interpretation when you have a rule like that.
No, that's why people were in the race. I saw people like, well, why is he not being black flag? That's a rule. Like even during the race, people were questioning.
Yeah, but I didn't hear the announcers doing that.
Yeah, they didn't.
What a surprise, huh?
Yep.
The guys that are supposed to know everything. And they're getting tweets and all sorts of stuff online about it. And who's the guy that we're going to go to in a minute that's with Pollard? The dude with the beard?
Oh, Rutledge Wood.
Who?
Yeah, Rutledge Wood. Yeah.
Rutledge Wood. So isn't part of his job to like scan the internet and what's going on?
Usually, yeah. Yeah, you would think that. And the whole reason you play that on TV, somebody tipped. I mean, it's not like they're like the 3 guys in the booth are listening to scanners. It's somebody that tipped them, hey, Chase Elliott can't hear his crew or vice versa. They're having radio problems. So they played it on there. And I don't know why they didn't expand or compound on that. Like, oh, yeah, that should be a penalty. And they're not. The fact they missed it, I'm like, man, that you've again missed. That's a huge deal. And you just let it slip away. And then here NASCAR, it's bad that TV doesn't say it, and you have NASCAR on their own radio network the next morning and admits we messed up. We blew the call. Yeah, he should have been penalized. Looking back on it, we didn't have the right information. We stopped listening. We should have kept going, and yeah, he should have been penalized. So why is the booth on Sunday not talking about it? They missed it big time.
I got to tell you, and I don't always have to blame the analysts because they have people that are supposed to be helping them. And whoever these guys are need to be fired because they're not doing their jobs.
Yeah, it's bad.
Unless they're not paying anybody to help them and they're doing it all by themselves. And if that's the case, then they get what they paid for. But
what's even more frustrating is Letarte was a crew chief and Junior was a driver, and they were for each other. They could have talked a lot more about driver, crew chief, and spotter communication. That's like that's your area, that's your arena. And you didn't even bring it up. But the other, not conspiracy, but thing people were bringing up were, hey, Junior was a Hendrick guy. Letarte was a Hendrick guy. That's a Hendrick driver.
Yeah, so
purposely not saying anything?
Yeah. So
is it a conflict of interest? It's you start getting these things like, whoa, this is going to get bigger here. Like if Chase Elliott makes it, let's say Chase Elliott makes the championship 4, but doesn't win a race. He takes a wild card spot. This is getting brought up again. You know it is, especially if Brad Keselowski, Mr. Brings everything up. If he doesn't get in because of this, you know it's getting brought up again. And what are we talking about leading to the championship? Drama. And it's just like to me, I wish NASCAR didn't say anything.
Yeah, that's the thing that doesn't make sense. Just as like what we talked about with Bubba Wallace. It's like, if you just handle this the right way and don't say things that are not necessary, then people won't. It'll be gone and nobody will pay. I don't know. Maybe they were afraid that it would leak out somehow. I don't know. I don't get it. Why do that? Why?
Yeah, it was weird. I don't know. I don't know why that was even brought. I get them asking the question, but I feel like Scott Miller should have just said, hey, it was a judgment call. We felt there was enough there to leave it alone and just leave it.
Everybody would have been
fine
with
it. And then it was warned in a driver's meeting this week, like, hey, we're listening. It's a competition issue. It's a safety issue. Just make sure this doesn't happen again, and then to move on. It's a moot point. But saying you missed the call and he should have been penalized, yeah, especially when the guy finished the 6th and gets all those stage points and is only 8 points out. Yeah, that's
not good.
That doesn't look good.
All right, now let's get this sound bite because I thought it was pretty funny. Because what we're going to hear is that guy you're talking about, Rutledge, and he's they got Bernard Pollard there, the former NFL player, and everything that was going on here with this one specific give and take. Now, they didn't all work, but this one seemed like, okay, this is leading up to something that makes sense. This is what we talk about all the time: is have people on to question the people who know stuff and have them answer it to the layman people. So Bernard Pollard and all of us can get this. And this is instead what we got.
I heard Dale say something about fresh air or something about the air. What is that for?
Dale, help us out here, buddy.
Well, these guys, they can go down underneath that line and get a little bit of advantage, but they're just trying to keep clean air on that nose to keep that car turning. It's important to not lose the front end of that car in the turns.
He ends it with, I don't even know what he was saying. The last couple of things he said, he was channeling his inner Biden. That's what he sounded like. So if everybody knows what I'm talking about, then that's what he sounded like. Where you were like you were looking at the TV going, what did he just say? I don't even know what the words were. And it's like he got flustered. And if he got flustered, I've got to believe he wasn't anticipating the question. I can't believe he was ready for this. And if he's not ready for this is terrible. If I'm Dale Jr. after the show, I'm ripping somebody's ass. I'm going, don't ask me questions like this. I mean, all you have to do is tell me before the show, and I can prepare for it. Now I look like an idiot.
Yep.
Yeah, he was totally unprepared. I think that caught him off guard. It sounded like it caught him off guard. It was almost like he was eating ice cream they were getting ready.
I need to finish here, and I'm like trying to get my words out before it like dribbles down my face.
Yes.
I mean, but what was the meaning then of what Pollard? Because answer his question, because Dale Jr. didn't do a good job of it.
So basically what he should have said was they're going below the white line on let's call it the front straightaway. I know there's like a triangle.
And by the way, it's interesting because this week, last on at Kansas, you can go underneath. But what we saw at Talladega with the penalties, you're not allowed to. So it was a good timing situation, a good learning situation from the week before to what we were seeing this week. If you had just watched your first 2 NASCAR races, you're probably very confused. Hey, wait a second, I'm seeing them drive underneath the line there, and they were being penalized for it last week.
Yeah, so you word it as a safety. So Daytona or Talladega, your only 2 tracks on the entire schedule. Think of that white line, like we see in this video, as the out-of-bounds line. Like a football game, you can keep it for Bernard Pollard. The white markings on the outside of the football field is out of bounds. You step on it, you're out of bounds. You can't. If there's a defender forcing you over there, you can't just run on the sidelines and back around by him. So it's out of bounds. You go past it, you're stopped there. So this week, and for Kansas and every other track, you can go below that line. And what they're trying to do by go below that line is they're trying to get clean air on the front of their car. Because when they're behind a car, consider going down the interstate and you're behind a semi, and all that dirty air kind of makes your car feel like it's going to fly off the road. That's called the dirty air. That's what these guys get when they're behind a car in front of them. But imagine doing that at 180, 190 miles an hour. With all that dirty air, it's going to throw your car. But they get a washout feeling. So you get in that dirty air, it wants your car to go up the track. So what they do is they cut through the air and go below the yellow line or the white line. So it gets that clean air on their front. So in a tow, think of it like a bubble behind the car, that dirty air. But behind the bubble, like on a boat, you see the waves behind in like a wake. But there's also the smoother portion and wake that you can suck in. Well, they're using that air. They're manipulating the air to get in the smooth portion, which you get in that smoother part, it'll suck you in. But if you get too close, you hit that wall of air and you want to wash out. So they're getting in the smooth portion to speed up like a turbo. Think of it like a turbo. And they're cutting out of that air and going below the line so they don't have that dirty air on them when they can continue forward and try to make a pass.
Now, were we seeing any of that, like when we were watching Harvick going low with Logano from behind, were they both underneath the line? Because they were showing it from the camera angle of inside the seat of Harvick, so I couldn't tell. Because then, if he wasn't, then why wouldn't he do that?
They were trying. There were a few times they did.
There were times. Yeah, there were definitely times.
I would have to believe that was because he was trying everything.
In person, because TV doesn't show a lot. But at these mile and a half tracks in person, like Kentucky, I'll see if I can find a video and I can tweet it out. But I would say 7th, 8th on back. It's crazy. They're all below the line. The whole inside line. They're always down there. Trying to get that clean air, and guys are dive bombing you down there. Ryan Blaney at Kentucky is a prime example. He got below the line and hit. There's a manhole cover for the water if it rains to come out, and he bottomed out over it. And he went back up the track, and was it Harvick or he hit, and Harvick got into he hit Harvick. Harvick got into Truex, and that's what let Cole Custer by to win. So sometimes there's drains below there you have to avoid. But yeah, it's think of it as if there is asphalt on the racetrack and anywhere but Talladega and Daytona, you can go there. And a lot of guys are trying to find clean air with nobody in front of them. And that's why Logano was blocking so much. He was trying to throw that dirty air on Harvick's nose because it makes your car two ways. Most of the time it makes you want to wash out into the wall. Other times it can work in reverse and it makes your rear end want to step out from behind you. Either way, you have to get out of the gas, which is why you, in turn, can't pass because you're going slower than the car in front of you.
And they've shown this a lot, haven't they, on the Fox broadcasts? They actually show you video.
They show the air. Yeah, a lot of times they show that air. Yeah.
Oh, good job, NBC.
They need to show that dirty air. Just think of it it's literally dirty air going on that car. And again, that's the package that NASCAR brings. We've seen it more times than I. Like Truex told me a few weeks ago that why these mile and a half tracks are so random with winners is because of these. Every race, it seems like there's a late race caution. This one, you have 42 laps to the finish. Vegas was like 30, and it's all pot luck right before that. It's a pitch strategy or like Logano, who led 2 laps all day, getting to the front because once you're to the front on that final restart, you can't pass them. So that's why I feel like this could be a week with some of these guys for Texas aren't very good, and you got guys not in the playoffs, or they were maybe in the playoffs but have been out by now for the championship that could win this week because they could go pick calls and strategy to find their way to the front, and you're not going to get by them. It's proven that your car can be running 230 miles. You can have an Indy car, and you get behind that dirty air of the car in front of you, and you're not going to pass the NASCAR. Just that's the way this package is with NASCAR, and it's unfortunate, but that's why you keep seeing these random winners.
Well, like it's similar. The outside lane is similar to Kansas last week at Texas, where you want to be on the outside. You might be able to pass on the inside. It's possible. It's not like Kentucky, but it's still the outside lane. And this is, again, another 1.5-mile racetrack with higher banking than the other 1.5 miles. So it's more similar to Atlanta and Charlotte, correct?
Yep.
Okay, so 16 of the last 19 winners of this racetrack started in the top 10. Dillon, though, did not this year, and he started 21st. The others were 15th and 24th during that 19th. So you do want to start in the top 10, which is probably what we're going to get today. I mean, on Sunday, because all the playoff drivers are starting in the top 10. And we would think that a playoff driver will once again win one of these races. As far as our picks are concerned, we don't have a lot. There are 5 drivers that we've picked between the 3 of us. 5. And that means we are getting to the point where we know a playoff driver is going to end up winning these races. It's just the luck, even though you don't know who, it's still going to, and if there's a little bit of surprise, it'll still wind up being a top driver, if not a playoff driver.
If this is one of those 2, if not out of our 5, if not one of them wins, if it's somebody outside of that, it's a complete, utter fluke disaster. And if you picked one of those others, there's 40 cars in the field. We've given 35. You 5. So if you picked one of the other 35, hop in your car, go get a lottery ticket because you hit it. Because there's absolutely no positive way that any of the other 35 should be our 5 that we're giving you, unless a fluke caution or something happens, which is outside the realm that you can't predict that, but that's how predictable these races have become and should be for bettors, because you're going to have a lot of betting people start getting mad that, hey, I bet on these guys, and why is this random guy winning again? So, yeah, it's our 5 should win this week.
Well, there's only 2. I probably should say there's probably 3, but realistically 1. Out of the ones we haven't picked, because Logano we stayed away from because he just won.
Yep.
Keselowski's never won here, so that leaves Elliott. Chase Elliott is the one driver out of our drivers that we did not pick. That if he won, we would be okay with. But that's it. We all went with Harvick. It's the only driver we all went with, and you guys can get out of these big holes if Kevin Harvick wins. So, and why not? Thinking that Harvick's going to win. 12 straight top 10s, 9 of those top 5s, 3 of those runner-ups, 3 of those are wins. He's won this race the last 3 years in a row, and he's led 54 laps a race during that time period. 5th in July, leading 40 laps, and he won Atlanta. He's 2-1. It's as bad as you want, but it's okay considering where we are. This is one of those 2-1 shots that I think we all kind of just say, okay, but we're going to go with it.
You kind of have to. I mean, he's on the pole, too. I mean, that's the other fact. Now he's on the pole. He's got the clean air up front. There you go. He's just too good. I mean, he's the fastest car on the season. He hasn't won in a little while. He's due, and you just look at, which I'm sure we'll get to, all the other guys that he's against in their stats at Texas. They're just not good there. It just seems to me that this race week, and you're putting the proverbial college team versus the NFL team. That's Harvick being the NFL. He's just that much better than everybody, and I'd be shocked if he didn't win. It'd have to take something, a late pit call.
You have to go back to 2014 to find the last time he finished outside of the top 10 here. And that was a mistake. That was an engine failure. So that wasn't even his fault. And then 2 out of the last 4 races, he's led over 100 laps. And he led 40 laps here and finished 5th earlier this year. And like you said, he's won on one of these tracks already this season. 2nd last week. As Eric said, fastest car pretty much all season. It's pretty much a no-brainer this week.
That's why the only.
Did you see what he said? Did you see what he said at his press conferences that he was asked about this week? He goes, "Oh, I feel really good about Texas because we didn't have a great car at Kansas, and we made some changes, came back and finished 2nd. I feel like if we make those same changes, that there's a reason he's a technical guy. He knows what he needs out of his car. We apply those changes to my Texas car that he finished in the top 5 with, and you look at these stats in the past." You're giving him a better car now and the pole. So he said that. I'm like, all in, going all of you.
Yep.
You convinced me there. So
it's going to like you said, though, it's going to have to come from a late caution, something freaky where Harvick is caught on the pits at the wrong time and we get 10 crappy cars. Like what happened with Kurt Busch, and Harvick just can't make up that much time, and that's it. Other than that, it really is impossible to think that Harvick is not going to win this race. But it is NASCAR, so you just never know. Things like that can happen. CJ, you were the only one who went with Denny Hamlin. He did win the race last year, but the other 4 races of his last 5, his average finish is 28th. So that's really weird. But he has won here 3 times, and he was 5th in Atlanta and runner-up in one of the Charlotte races.
Yeah, hit or miss here at this track, no question. 28th and 20th of his last 2 times out, but he led 45 laps in the spring race 2019 when he won. Led 11 laps here earlier this year, so he's got the speed. I think as long as he doesn't shoot himself in the foot, I think the thing that worries me about Hamlin, and this, I don't know how it'll affect next week, but depending on how he performs, like he's slipping. The guys said it on TV and they're right. He's starting to throw away points. He's given up points here and there. He can't keep doing that if he's going to be a real contender for the championship. When you've got somebody like Kevin Harvick, who is on every single week and just taking you to town with the points, Hamlin's got to figure out a way that he can keep it up through these last handful of races throughout the year. And I think Texas is his chance to really prove it. So if he can come out on Sunday, run really consistently, if he's had the speed, or if he has the speed again that he's had most of the season, he's going to be inside the top 5. He's going to be in there in contention to win. So for me, choosing him this week is more about my confidence in him being able to figure out how to close out a season, more so than his inconsistency here specifically at Texas. But he does have 3 wins.
Yeah, because he would even take a top 5. I mean, that would be good. That's a step in the right direction. And then do it again at Martinsville, and then go out, of course, and win the championship. Logano actually has a pretty good run here of 12 top 10s in his last 15. 10 of those are top 5s. A runner-up and a win in 2014, 3rd in July, but expecting him to win back-to-back races after he's already in the championship, it doesn't really make sense at 6-1, because right now you got to think he's not worried about anything except how to win in a few weeks.
Yeah, they're just keeping the momentum is what they're trying to do now. So they're probably just going for a top 10. And he's even mentioned they're in Phoenix mode now. Their cars back at the shop are, hey, we've got 2 extra weeks to massage a Phoenix car. We get to get a championship car ready, and let's focus there. Let's not focus at Texas. We'll just take the car because they're not just getting cars set up the week before they go. Those are usually 2, 3, 4 weeks in advance. The car's sitting over here. This is the one we're taking. They probably like, oh, cool. We're just gonna roll with that car. Now that Phoenix car over there. Hey, all you guys, let's go focus there. So I don't see them winning with the mindset of Phoenix now. They're just trying to do everything for Phoenix. Which why would you not? You're already there. You want to win the championship, not win the Auto Trader Eco Park Automotive Group 500. You're looking for the Phoenix win. So. Yeah, I think they're Phoenix mode. That's why I didn't take him.
Elliott's 8-1. He's got 5 top 10s and 2 top 5s in 9 races. He hasn't fared all that well, though, in his last 3, including 12th in July. He was runner-up in the Coke 600, and he's been on fire, really. He's got his momentum back again. 6th, 1st, and 5th in the last 3 races. So, again, even if he doesn't win, I think it's real important for Elliott to keep up that momentum.
Yeah, I like Elliott. I think he's going to have speed this weekend. I think he's probably going to outperform the last handful of times that he's been at this track. The reason I didn't go with him is really that laps led column. He's the only time he's led more than double digits laps at Texas was the spring race in 2019 when he finished 13th. But that was the start of the last 3 races, like you said, 13, 30. I do think he'll be fast this weekend. I think he's probably, based on his momentum, a pretty good choice.
Eric, you went with Truex and Blaney, 9-1, 10-1. Now, Blaney has 5 top 10s in his last 6 races. He overheated in the other race and led 45 laps in that race. So he's done really well here the last 6 races, except for overheating. He led 148 laps in 2017 in one of those races. Led 150 laps in July and finished 7th, one of those typical races that Blaney couldn't finish for whatever reason. And he's finished 3rd, and 4th in Atlanta and Charlotte, those 3 races. So a lot of reasons to think that Blaney, the only reason to think not is just psychologically, and they haven't finished lately, and they're not a playoff driver. Other than that, he's doing everything else. And Truex, though, just 1 top 5 in his last 7, led 15 laps in July, and he's never won here. He's 0 for 30. But you decided to still put a little bit of money on Truex. Blaney seems like a better shot than Truex.
Yeah, I think Blaney's got. I mean, the July race. Keep want to say April. It used to be in April. It's July this year. He had that race won. He swept both stages, and it was that fluke. Was it Quinn Half? I forget even his name. That decided to pit from the middle of turn 4. It's like, oh, I'm going to go ahead and pit, and calls a caution. And again, late race caution that screwed the guys that already pit, like Blaney, and he could only rebound to 7th. So the car was best there. I think now you're adding more grip because it's going to end under the lights more than likely on Sunday. And I thought he had a good race on this past Sunday at Kansas. He was just kind of staying out of the way of the championship guys. But now I don't know how many championship guys are going to be up front with him. I just don't trust some of these guys. I threw money on Truex just to have somebody different because it just seems like we keep getting new mile-and-a-half winners, it seems like, every race. So
okay,
them being 31 points out, like, he's
you did it over Keselowski too, because Keselowski's 0 for 24 at Texas, so he's just as bad. I guess he's got an edge though because he did win the Coke 600 this year. But you decided to go with Truex over Keselowski if you were making that choice. Yeah,
because Keselowski, I looked at that, but he's got 2 top 5s in his last 12 races on the season. He's mentioned that these 7 or 550 tracks aren't their strong suit. He was shocked he got a top 5 at Kansas. So that told me, I pumped the brakes on him. I think he's just going to try to get a top 10 because he knows he's got a great shot at Martinsville. Keep that points advantage. Truex has to be aggressive. They've got to be aggressive with their pit calls, being 31 points out. So I went with the Truex just off the off chance that they've got to go off strategy. And Blaney, I feel like if Blaney was still in it, like we all thought he would be all year, this could be his race that I would say to me on speed, Blaney's going to be Harvick's biggest threat for the win. Now, does Blaney get out of the way? Who knows? I don't see him rate. He's got a lot of friends up front, like Elliott, and him and Hamlin have got along. I don't see him running those guys too hard to get in their way, but if they're not up there with them, then yeah, watch out. I think Blaney could definitely steal a win this weekend.
And Bowman was the only other driver that we put money on. Eric, you and I put money on Bowman, even though he only has 1 top 5 in 10 races. That was in this race last year when he finished 5th. He crashed in July. And it's not like he hasn't done anything result-wise at Chicago and Atlanta, except for the fact that he won 3 stages. The results weren't there, but the stages were. And he's just red hot. And sort of like what Eric Jones was recently. And when you get a driver that's red hot, you just keep going with him, and maybe he'll get lucky one of these weeks.
Yeah, I feel like they figured something out at Kansas. He said their car wasn't that great, and then they just worked on it as the race went on. And like you said, after the final stop, he was faster. The lap time showed he was fastest car on the track. There was that air again. He couldn't get back up there. And he's got 7 top 10s in his last 9 starts on the season. Like you said, 5th in this race last year. I feel like he's got a good race car. He's got good speed. So, yeah, why not throw some money his way just to see what happens? Because, again, he's 27 points out. He's probably, depending on how the stages go, they're looking at 2 tires stop at the end, maybe fuel only, depending on when the cautions come. Don't pit at all. They're in a position. They've got to do something off strategy. And, again, you get the clean air. He's got speed right now. He's going to be hard to pass.
CJ, any of the other drivers that you would have considered? I mean, Kyle has some good numbers here, but we're talking about Kyle Busch this year, and that doesn't ever seem to work out for him. I mean, Eric Jones has a good history here. Alec Almirola has a decent history here. Of course, Dillon won this race in July. Reddick was 2nd in July. Anybody else that you were considering? And William Byron has been kind of picking things up, 8th, 6th, and 4th in his last 3 races.
Yeah, I like Byron, but I really think this is Kevin Harvick's race to lose. And if I were going to go with anybody else, I'd go for a deep, long shot and somebody like a Tyler Reddick. We know Richard Childress Racing has had speed at these tracks all year. They made the call to stay out, and that's how Austin Dillon got his win. Reddick's no slouch either, so putting that pace to use, I think Tyler Reddick would be a good deep long shot. But other than that, I really do think it's Kevin Harvick's to lose this week.
All right, before we drop it, the off the track news, Eric Jones gets his ride What do you think this does for Eric Jones's chances? I mean, Richard Petty, Bubba Wallace hasn't been able to do much with Richard Petty. So do you think Eric Jones can do any better?
It's going to be the best chance Richard Petty Motorsports has to move forward in the field. I think this will be a real test of their equipment because they finally got a real driver, not to say that Bubba Wallace isn't exceptional and doesn't deserve a top ride, because he absolutely does. But I think coming from somebody like Joe Gibbs and Eric Jones, with the success that he's had so far in his career, I think he's going to be a better car developer for them than they've probably had in quite some time. So I think this is going to be a real test for the team, more so than Eric Jones.
And Eric, you had mentioned, you guys mentioned a few weeks ago about Briscoe replacing Boyer, and that's official, right?
Yep, came out. Maybe Monday, Tuesday. Yeah, he got the seat. Good for him. He's won 9 races in the 9 races in the Xfinity Series. Yeah, and
that just shows you. I'm telling you that the depth talent at the Xfinity Series is getting dry.
And he's been good though. I feel like and like Tony Stewart said, this is gonna rise this team up. He feels like a notch. Nothing against Boyer, but
give me a gauge of his talents of one of the other rookies,
Kyle Larson,
or sophomores.
Christopher Bell. I would say Christopher Bell. He's on, but keep in mind Christopher Bell in a better car. That's not to talk bad about Cole Custer, but I think he's better than Cole Custer. He's a dirt racer, great on road courses, and here we've got 6 of them next year. Good on short tracks. He likes the cars. His biggest adjustment is going to be like what Christopher Bell had. Is they've never raced 500-mile races before, and he's good with a loose race car, kind of how Larson had that little struggle there when we went to this package. He likes to run the high line and the car just hang loose, which looses fast. Now you throw in all that downforce. You got to change your whole driving style. So he's going to have to change his driving style, but I would say I'd put him on like a Christopher Bell. He's like that.
All right, and then we'll maybe even by next week know more about Kyle Larson and when or if he's seriously going to be the next driver of the 88. It sure seems like that's the case, but nothing official just yet. What are you going to be doing for this weekend, CJ?
We've got our usual fantasy previews for Trucks, Xfinity, and Cup. And then on rotowire.com on Monday, we will have a recap of the race.
Yeah, CJ right now, his technical issues that you see right now have to do with the fact that he's never had to endure 57 minutes before. And it's just breaking down. It's just, come on, finish the show before we crash. So, Eric, what are you going to be doing for your website this week?
We'll have a Cup recap, a little bit of Cup stuff, but a lot of IndyCar. It's the last race down in St. Pete. So, IndyCar season finale. We'll have that, and then a lot of stuff for that, and then a little bit of Cup, and then back with NASCAR for the final 2 races after that.
Right. And it's good to see CJ's head moved, so I know that the screen wasn't frozen.
He's still there.
I was talking. Nobody was hearing me.
That's okay. We got you. All right, guys. Appreciate it as always. Next week, we'll preview the final race before the final race. So thanks, guys. We'll talk to you next week.